It's in the Kvachabad recently, connection with what? 120 years. So the interview Chassidim, this is part one. And here is an interview with, anybody knows what this is? Okay, you should know. The name is Rabbi Vogel. And Rabbi Vogel from London, he is one of the pioneer shluchim of our generation. And he was born Tafei Sadik Vav, which means 1936. His parents were from not Chassidim, and when he was 15 years old, this is Tavshin Yud Aleph, 1951. So he says, my parents sent me to Manchester. The history is fascinating here. Now, in Manchester in those days, there lived the Chassid, the Yitzchak Dubov. He's a famous Chassid in Lubavitch, because the Yitzchak Dubov, an elder Chassid, and he has great-grandchildren, shluchim all over the world. One of his, maybe it's a grandchild, is on COL. He gives a shir every week, I see, in the Maimer, the Sicha. He's a shliach in Wimbledon. He spoke once at the Kinnis, if you remember. Siddish and Geman, the tremendously successful shliach. At any rate, so this Yitzchak Dubov is very famous because of the Fabrengen. He was there, Tavshin Yud Aleph, Yud Aleph Shvat, the first Fabrengen, and he said, he was one of the first Mukusharim. And he said, the Sichas are nice, you want to hear a Maimer. It was his, Yitzchak Dubov, famous Chassid. He lived in Manchester, and he'd come, but that's an amazing thing then, he'd come from to New York. So he lived in those days in Manchester, and he was a Rav in a shul called Adas Yisrael, not a Lubavitch shul. And he was, and this is a beautiful thing, respected by the entire Jewry of the city. Now, even though the yeshiva in Manchester was not a Lubavitch yeshiva, but because he was so respected, he was one of its faculty, one of the Rosh Yeshiva. And so there was a Tanya shir in the Manchester yeshiva in those days. So he said, I didn't know much about Lubavitch. I knew that there was a Lubavitch Rebbe in America, this is 1951. I heard about the Frierdiker Rebbe, that in the difficult times of Russia, he kept Yiddishkeit alive with Mesiras Nefesh. But I didn't know anything of substance about Lubavitch. Now listen, in yeshiva there, they learned to feel Lubavitch Bochrim. These are Russian kids that had just come out of Russia, and they'd come to London, and the parents lived in London, but there was no yeshiva there. There was a yeshiva in Manchester. Who were these Bochrim? Avrem Shem Tov, Berel Futefas, and Sholem Ber Gurkov, who lived, so he's in Montreal today, right? I haven't seen him in a while. Who taught you guys here in Montreal. So they said, this is amazing to me. These kids, Bachrim, they're teenagers. They had not seen the Rebbe themselves yet. They're telling him, 5-ish Vogel, you should write to the Rebbe. Kid, right? See, and I did. And I wrote to the Rebbe like this, that I attend the shir in Tanya of Rabbi Dubov, and I almost don't understand anything. He speaks Zruchnius, and it's transcendent, Mufshotim, and what's the point? So it's a cliffhanger, friends. I got an answer very soon. Whatever writes a lengthy response to this kid in Manchester Yeshiva, which I'll share with you, God willing, tomorrow, and other stories in his becoming a Chassid. And the end, as I mentioned, one of the pioneering shluchim of Dor HaShvi, the 7th generation. All to Beit Hashem tomorrow.